All right, I'd like to call the February 19th, 2025 regular board meeting of the Ross Valley Sanitary District to order. May we have a roll call, please? Here.
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 Thank you. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now I'd like to adjourn to closed session. All right, I'd like to call us back into open session. There is nothing to report. Now I'd like to have a review of the agenda and approve and a motion to approve it if everybody's okay.
We need to move anything, so I move the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll go to item number 8, committee and representative report out, Finance Committee. Tom, will you give us a report on the Finance Committee?
Okay, Mary and I met yesterday and we had a good finance committee meeting. With the December revenues of the surcharge and property tax, we're now meeting all of our reserved targets, which we weren't in November. That's our low point of the year. We're also meeting all of our budget expense projections except for legal, and you can see why. We've got a lot of legal things going on. But we're over budget about 50,000 on that, which isn't key. We're in all the other expense categories, we're below or at budget, so we're doing quite well. And we're, of course, in excellent financial condition as well. We went over some cleanup items on the consent calendar, including approving the prior fiscal years 22, 23, 24 salary schedules. We probably did 98.7% of what we were supposed to do and didn't file something on time. And also we have a profit on the sale of Kerner. And so we sold it for, to an outside interest. So we have to substitute capital projects for that. So it's just a technical exchange with no, impact to us at all. And then we had a couple of approvals of, we finished off with the Kentfield Woodland Road project, which had a lot of creek crossings. And we also finished, the headquarters, all the improvements outside the headquarters. And then we went over a lot of the items on the agenda. We also did one final review of the proposed revenue bond refunding. And we definitely all agree that we need to postpone that until at least after we figure out what's happening on Larkspur Landing. I think that was key things. Can you think of anything else, Mary?
No, I think that summarized it. Yeah, the rest of the items we're going to address tonight. Capital projects and such. Thank you. Business Plan Committee met, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, that's why Doug had to run out to his car.
That's
Okay,
why I had to
thank
run out
you.
to my car.
I did it. Your turn.
Okay. So we did go over the 24-25 business plan and reviewed what we did last year up until this year. We looked at what was changed. We talked about the participation in discussions to consolidate with JPA partner agencies. We talked about renewing our transparency certificate of excellence, and ongoing things like our competency-based training, our increased capabilities of the pump station crew through additional skills set in. We talked about we were conducting a sewer system management plan audit, and that was done on August 24. We installed the new generator at LS30. That's slated for June 2025. We have increased our credit rating again. from AA to AA plus, and that was January 2025. So we're very happy about that. We reviewed and updated the district financial policies for the board approval in January 25.
You put that on the business plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's on the update and the review of what we've done in the past. And in October 24, we explored permit tracking system solution for permit forms and inspection workflows with web-based customer service portal for application intake. I can't remember, what was the company's? Do you remember?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I mean, one of them's Tyler, right?
Yeah, the one is Tyler, one is,
But how many have you met with so far? There have been 4 different companies that we've met with. We haven't selected one yet, but we're making progress. And yeah, and the business plan is sort of the implementation of our strategic plan for the year. And so we kind of go line by line, and as board member Kelly is doing there, in terms of where we at with respect to what we projected we'd be, what our timeline was for these different activities.
Do we get a copy of this review? Does that come out?
Yes, this one right here.
Where is it?
Will that be in a board packet later on for us or? Okay.
That's not how we've been doing it, but
Okay.
we
Yeah, I
can.
Is it on the website?
Yeah, we did that,
Okay.
right? I think Christina last year put
Yeah.
the status on the website, I believe. Yeah, so.
Tom would like a copy. is what I'm-
It might be a good idea so
Put it
that I
in-
don't have to run out to my car to have these agenda items on the agenda when we're reviewing these, because we don't meet all the time.
Yeah, like it on the consent calendar.
Well, that's why we have the committee, but yeah, we
Yeah.
can talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Put that in your business plan.
Or I could put it in the outreach, public
All right,
outreach.
is that, okay, do you want to give us a report on Education and Outreach Committee now?
Yes.
Go.
So we're looking at the metrics of our next door and verified residents, claimed households, new members, views. So I think the highest number of views was in September at 10,054, which was really interesting. It's as low as 1,460 in January. I'm not really sure why those are. But the point is we're getting our word out on Nextdoor. People are reviewing it, and that's good. We continue to have engagement on YouTube and on Comcast. And I know because I see them all the time on both YouTube and Comcast. So those are helpful. Those are our videos. We had the one new video this year, which was Call Us First. And interestingly enough, as Steve and Paul know, I reported a Nextdoor post from somebody saying that an apartment complex in Larkspur had an overflow on their own property, but it had been going on for a week. And people were saying, what do we do? What do we do? And what I posted on Nextdoor is call us first. And here's the video. Here's the phone number. And here's the video. But don't call us because I've already called in and Paul is all over that individual item. But the GM bulletin is also going out. We had advertisements on Marin IJ. I'm sorry, that's the other place where I've seen our videos and our laterals and, the click here's. So the impressions delivered 50,000 in January. Click percentage is 4% to 5%, which is higher than normal for those types of ads where people click through. Because even for me, I look at the ad, which says, you can get money for your lateral, call us. I got it. I never really noticed. It says click here and you go right to the website and it tells you a lot more. So the ads are good by themselves. And then the click through to have more information is 4%, which I understand is fairly high in that kind of industry. So we've got the Marin IJ digital ads, our website, our GM bulletin, and Nextdoor. And the website views, new users, I think the high month was February with new users of 3,484, which is good. So we're getting it out there. We also had the business breakfast here in this room, which is an ongoing issue. Obviously, we had the 125th anniversary and ribbon cutting. We have the agency awards that we've gotten. The Anderson Drive consolidation ribbon cutting. ongoing communication, the employee portal for them, the GM bulletin, printed materials, community ads, social media, and our website. The new one we did also this year, in addition to Call Us First, was, and I think all of us were surprised, people in certain industries are flushing their gloves.
Right.
And that's really clogging up the system. Put that together with a little fat, oil, and grease and some flushable wipes, and you've got yourself an SSO. So we're reaching out to specifically targeting hospitals and medical offices on the don't flush the gloves, which I just, as I said, I think in another meeting, I just find that really odd. I can't understand why you would, anyway, it happens. And so ongoing ads, trash it, don't flush it. And we have a new way of doing our ads color-wise. In 2023, there were kind of a lot of white wording, white background with wording, and we've changed that to a blue black background with white and orange lettering, and it just seems to have a better pop. And we're also again on LinkedIn. So the other thing is our printed materials, the don't flush it. Door hangers, and not some of which are in the back of my car because you gave them to me at that meeting, and I'm handing some of those out. So I think our outreach has been really, really good. I really appreciate it. I think you've done a great job, and we're going to continue to reach out to the community and talk to them about things that are important.
Great, thank you. Human Resources Committee. Michael.
I'll give it a shot here. So first, Tom mentioned that yesterday you guys discussed at the Finance Committee that there was a couple little points we got dinged on regarding compliance with reporting out of certain salary schedules. Not a problem. I believe it's all been repaired and fixed, and so that T has been crossed and the I's have been dotted. So that's good. Also, there's a rather vague thing in the consent calendar with a company called Vander Meiden Make Us for amount not to exceed 75,000. The reason it's there is because it exceeds signing authority of our general manager. It exceeds the signing manager authority of our general manager, and we can't really talk about it, but sometimes in the course of human events here, in order to make sure that everything is with the T's crossed and the I's dotted, you have to do an internal investigation. And so that's what that is. Nothing's happened, but staff felt this was necessary to just make sure that we're being compliant in all forms. So.
Thank you. Central Marin Sanitation Agency.
I'll do that. So we had received an award from SIWA Engineering Achievement Award for 2024, Achieving Energy Positive Wastewater Treatment While Tackling SB 138 Climate Goals, the 15-year journey. And it showed how we have produced more and more energy through different works, putting in the Jenbacher generator, the new one, which can provide more energy. They did the study, they did mini aerobic digesters and learned how we can put in way more fat, soil, and grease and organic material in there, generating a lot more biogas to burn in our Jenbacher, producing more and more energy. And we were, for the year 2024, energy positive, but not energy positive on every single solitary day. However, some of the things that we've done to achieve this award is we've increased our organic intake. We even had a really interesting measurement tool that's usually used in clean water areas, whether salt or fresh water. And it was altered to give us scientific answers on what's going into the anaerobic digester. And we learned we can put in, we were told we were tapped out at a certain amount. We've now learned that's about 30% of what we can take. So we're putting in way more organic material. We have a lot more area. While we were energy positive, and let me see if I can find that slide. in 2014, not energy positive every single day. But we do intend to get energy positive every single day. And I don't think I can find that slide, every single day in 2025. And we believe we can get to, in 2025, 118% of our energy needs and more in 2026. So there's even a possibility of using the older, remember what the name of the older, what is it, Wasak?
Waukesha. engine.
Waukesha, adding that to the mix. And, but then we'd have to make a new agreement with the PG&E to sell energy. We're at 1 kilowatt maximum. And the reason we did that is because if you're more than that, you have to give them absolute projections on how much energy you're going to do all the time. And we were just starting it. We didn't think we could meet that. And if you don't, then you get fined, and there's all sorts of issues where it's more really hard. And there's a lot of reporting that's involved in that. However, now we think we can project our energy output. And so we may get there and do a renewed deal with PG&E where we're selling back a lot more power. In addition to the fact that we are going to have to do more nutrient removal at that plant, and that's going to be a lot more energy. So if we get more energy, we don't have to sell it back to PG&E. We can continue to use it at the plant. So it's really saved us millions of dollars a year. It's been a great program. I'm really proud that we've done it, and we're going to continue to do that.
And we even get, this is, I'm kind of new to being on CMSA. We get paid for people coming and bringing their biosolids, right? There's a dump
Yes.
fee,
It's a tipping fee.
a tipping fee. That's right. And so we're providing a service and getting paid and then able to use that to create energy. So that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's really good. We also had, we gave a construction award to redo the parking lot. So that was just something that needs to be done on account. Don't forget the same thing we learned here with this parking lot, which we thought was going to be fine. And then we had to completely take it out and redo it. There's a lot of heavy trucks there. And so, we have to on occasion redo that. So that'll be done. It was 303,000. And we had, if I remember on that one, I didn't get my little.
One other quick factoid that I think they mentioned was that CMSA is one of 4 agencies in the country that have achieved that power goal. So
The engineer's estimate for the paving project was $380,000. We awarded it to EE Gilbert Construction at 303, and we had a bid from H&S for 468. So, we were down 20.1% on the engineer's estimate, and the high bid was plus 23%. The next one was the hydrogen peroxide facility relocation feasibility study. So again, this is in reference to the Oak Hill, the Village at Oak Hill project, which is near our Larkspur Landing project, where we have a hydrogen peroxide facility there. And we have and Mary's been really good on this. We have an easement there, and it's been 35 years.
But we lost, but I was wrong. And
We built a,
We don't have an easement?
we do.
we do have an easement, but I didn't realize the property was owned by the state. We have been talking with the developer. It was a developer who told us that he didn't think we had a legal right to.
They don't know what we don't have a legal right to. There's a turnaround that we built, a big cement turnaround, so our trucks can go in, do their work, turn around and drive out. They're saying we don't have the right of the turnaround, and they don't intend to leave it there. So that's what
And the state owns the
but
property.
this is all part of a closed session. So I don't want to talk about where we're going on that. I can only tell you about what we're talking about in public session. The
And what
closed
you
session.
did was approve the Corolla contract.
That is correct.
And didn't you talk to Steve? Because I thought we were going to add a better alternative, like.
We're working on
tree-
that. We're working on that. Steve is working on that.
Yeah, but we shouldn't have approved it at Central.
We weren't going to win it.
Well, I think we need to do some no votes personally. We need, because we needed to include that.
Well-
See, okay, well, my
I-
understanding of our legal rights were based on the fact that actually the legal advice we received earlier was sort of like, yeah, we have this easement, and we're gonna try to, enjoy our enjoy our easement, as I think the term is. And then I learned that against the state, not like,
Well, I agree with that, Mary, but I was just thinking, you know, Jason puts things on his
I hear you.
agenda that
I
he
hear you.
wants to do, and the alternatives aren't all the best alternatives. The Carollo study should include, which you did approve, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I,
Well, that's
called-
what that's what
I
I'm saying.
understand. I understand.
I
It
will
was
say
very
if it,
frustrating to
if
me
it,
because my opposition to it was based on my understanding of the law, which changed that night.
Yeah.
And I also knew that it was going to pass. It wasn't that hard to figure out from the tone in the room and the way that it had been worked. Now, it was done in a different order. We got legal advice in closed session prior to the item coming up.
Figured that.
But I also criticized who put together the agenda that shows us being on, having an item for which we're going to receive legal counsel about later. Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And I feel conflicted about it. On the other hand, the outcome wouldn't have been
Well,
different.
actually though, I think we have a really good alternative. We've got a pump station right there.
right.
Right next to the pipeline. We build a little.
Yep. So
block
Steve's
house.
Right,
working
well,
on, Steve's working on
I will
that.
say, good alternatives can be presented to the board, and I think, we need to start marshaling opinion on the board differently.
Yeah.
But right now, things
But
get,
I
things
understand.
get, things get spoon fed to the board and they approve
But
them.
my point is,
in
it
my
kind of
opinion.
got flung at you.
Absolutely.
And then there's this item, and so we're being manipulated.
I agree.
If it means anything, two things. It means anything to you. Eli had to ask me 3 times how I was voting. Finally, a third time, I said, fine. The second thing is I sent an article to Felicia and Steve that's in the IJ about that project. They're about $117 million in the hole. And here's the scheme they have.
Killer.
Is they want to have the Ross Valley School, not the Ross Valley, the school districts, and it's unclear which ones.
The Marin County School.
Department of Education.
Yeah. Department of
Department take 75% responsibility for the workforce housing, and the county of Marin take 25%. And any vacancies would have to be paid by that school district. Well, now we have Ross Valley School District coming for a special election where you get to choose your voters in March, looking for money, and we need to have people understand what they might be paying for in the future. But the other thing is, we had a Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers meeting the other day, and we had a guest, and that guest said, we allowed him to attend the whole meeting, and this came up, and he said, my wife's a teacher. We don't want to live there. I don't want the principal living above us telling us to turn our music down. There was somebody I spoke to recently, and they could speak up, said there was a poll about this in their district, and exactly 0 teachers wanted to live in an apartment complex with the rest of their teamwork. I mean, I know everybody at Ross Valley Sanitary District gets along, but I don't think they all want to live in the same complex with Steve and Felicia. So I think it's an interesting failure. And I think Mary Stompy on the cost board mentioned this was a complete, and she was in the housing business, complete failure in Sonoma. And so if you have all these vacant homes, this project may not be going anywhere. That's all I'm saying.
And right in the Green Bay area, there's that property that was sold to the Joint Powers Agency, and they sold bonds and paid off the developer 5 or 6 million. And they are the amount they're collecting is not enough. The bonds could be in technical default.
Mm.
And that's a private, it isn't restricted to just teachers and housing. So these projects are fraught with major problems.
Mm.
Yep. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, but
But I do want to thank Steve for his continuing work on other alternatives to the facility being moved or whatever else we can come up with. I continue to state personally that I think, so we have one of the options that's been presented is a study on the feasibility of, there's a recycling pipe from CMSA to that area
Oh, I know.
to fill up the pond, and they're talking about putting a pipe in a pipe. And that just,
With the toxins,
I just think that's a harebrained scheme.
bad idea.
Yeah, bad idea. Okay. That's about all that was. I hope
Yeah,
that's
that,
sufficient.
But that's fun. Anyway.
believe me, I've had my thoughts about, yeah, that. All right, North Bay Watershed, let's change gears.
We met February 7th, 9:30 in the morning at Novato Sanitary District. We did board officers, and Jean Mariani will remain the chair. She does a fabulous job. We had a different kind of presentation this time. We had a guest panel of air quality protection requirements and potential implications and resources for NBWA agencies. So the first guest, Andrew Reyes, was air resource engineer from California Air Resources Board. He talked about advanced clean fleets regulation, state and local government agency fleet requirements. You probably know about this, Steve, right? Some of it, yeah. And it depends on how big the vehicle is, if I remember correctly, and that all the rules are going to change, and it's all based about clean air. We had another speaker from air pollution specialist from California Air Resources Board. You want to pass that down?
I'm just giving you that. It's your data.
Okay. We had a third guest speaker, PE, Vice President of Clean Transportation, NV5. So I guess NV5 does other things besides communication. And then the last speaker was from an EV fleet, and he's an advisor, Dean Kunesh. And this synopsis that he put together for us. And some of these things will happen in 25 and some of them in 26. This will all be about charging infrastructure, California ZEV regulations, funding and procurements. We also passed our small grants and scholarship program. Woohoo! It's amazing. We started, I think it was back in August, and we now have it in place. And I'll tell you briefly. So there were 4 of us who did this. Myself, John Shribs, City of Petaluma, Elizabeth Patterson, Solano County Water Agency, Rob Carson from MC Stop, and then 2 staff members. And we fought it out till this last month. Actually, it was a lot of fun. I have to say, it's such a win-win doing something like this. So we ended up with giving $60,000 total for the program funding for 1 year. And out of that 60, there'll be 10,000 for scholarships and 50,000 for small grants. What else can I say? There is criteria, there is an application. Any age can apply. Even like kids that want to go to camp, if it's affiliated with the water, or something to do with water, we sitting around and we'll discuss whether or not we would approve it. Also, municipalities can apply, nonprofits, tribes, public, private educational institutions, and programs that benefit the NBWA. And that's it. Till next month.
Thank you. All right, next item is verbal report by general manager.
Well, thank you, President Silla and board members, and thank you for those report outs. There's a lot of work you had to do there with the report out and the February agenda. Appreciate it. And congratulations to board member Meg's on the scholarship program. You've worked for that for many years and came up with a good idea to bring that to the MBWA. So you deserve a lot of credit.
Your idea, though.
No, it's your idea. Excellent work. So on my report, I've got 4 items, but they're a little involved. So this will take a little time. I hope you're ready to settle in. But I hoped it to be engaging and interesting. The first item is there was a request that we look into interpretive sign ideas a couple months ago. And so we had a chance for outreach. The person in our staff that is in charge of outreach Christina Velazquez, who helped with the Education Outreach Committee report that you heard today. She also did some valuable research working with other staff to come up with some ideas. And so I want to summarize these ideas and give you an idea of the cost ranges of the choices, but then have a recommendation at the end of this brief talk. We looked at overall, the investment in an interpretive sign near pump station 15 is probably $25,000 to $50,000. Okay, is probably what we're looking at, and there are a lot of options within that range. And so you could bring it down to maybe 20,000, but all is said and done. There are several options on the actual sign. It could be a kind of a traditional sign that you see that's sort of vertical on posts. You can do a digital screen, which would be more like a $30,000 option, or you could do a sheltered kiosk is another thing you might see at California rest areas and that sort of thing. So these have a range of costs. And then additional options include a bike maintenance station, which could be 1,000 to 6,000. Little free library book exchange, 4,000 to 3,000. Seed station, encouraging local gardening and environmental awareness, could be little as 100 up to $2,000. A dog bag station with its benefits, but would require some maintenance of staff, 200 to 1,000, and then a water refill station, 2,000 to 5,000. So everything kind of runs up to, could be looking at a $50,000 project, or maybe 10 to 20. And so with all of that complexity, staff recommends that the board direct us to convene the Education and Outreach Committee so we can flesh out a couple of alternatives and recommend a budget and bring it back to you for your consideration. So what do you think of that?
Board, my first thought is that I live right nearby and there's already a dog bag thing by the tree there.
So that's an example of the complexity
that
of
was
what
my
we're talking
first
about.
thought.
Yeah, there's so many moving parts.
Education and outreach or Kentfield resident might be another idea, not to step on the education and outreach committee, but
You can make
it was
yes.
Director Borstein's idea, and I walk my dogs on the other side of the creek there
Mhm.
every single day.
Ad hoc committee can form. I mean,
Who's on the education?
Sure. Yeah, you guys could
Yeah,
do
I
it.
believe it's the two of them. But I just say that because of like the proximity.
Sure. You could do an ad hoc committee, not subject to the Brown Act, for the specific purpose of developing these ideas and then bringing something to the board.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
So how does that sound to you all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The only thing I would say is, much like the building here, is that it's not a 1 or 2 year
Commitment.
commitment. I mean, it is. I'm saying this is a very long-term commitment. So whether it's $20,000 or $50,000, it's over the long term that it will benefit the community,
Oh, I see.
that they will be more aware of what it is that we do, and where they're walking on a 42-inch, pipeline there, and who maintains it and what happens and how it all works. And I've always felt that it'd be nice if people knew what it is that we were doing here. And like what Mary said, is there's just a ton of people walking there. It'd be easy for us to maintain because it's right at the pump station. So I don't know how often we go to the pump station there, but it could, and if it's a digital sign, it could be up to, Christina could update it right from here with information.
I'm against
all
the
time.
digital signs. When both of the schools put up digital signs, the people and the college put up a digital sign, everybody freaked out. Everybody was like, what?
Really?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that at the meeting?
Yeah. Anyway,
Just
Just
establish-
deciding if we're going to have
Well,
our ad hoc subcommittee. I'm saying we should. And thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I
Okay,
appreciate that.
so yeah, let the
That's item
record
number
show
one.
that board member Silla and board member Borstein will form a committee,
Okay.
serve on an ad hoc committee to discuss the interpretive sign idea. That sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, that was my first item. I appreciate the input and feedback. Second item, we were in the news about a spill at Bon Air Center, and so I wanted to provide an update. The overall spill we've calculated was 113,289 gallons. We were able to recover 25,538 gallons, so the net spill was just under 88,000 gallons to a creek behind Bon Air Center. It came from a secondary force main. So it's not running 24/7, 365. This is a force main that connects Larkspur Pump Station 14, goes under the creek, and then there's a valve that allows that flow to go to Pump Station 13 at Greenbrae. It's something that's useful maybe when the flows are high going down the main force main 2 that Pump Station 14 usually goes to down the bike path we were just talking about. And so this is a secondary force main isn't in use as much. And when we had it in use during wet weather conditions, we had a leak and a spill. We responded within an hour of being aware of the spill. So it was a good performance of our field response team. We had folks, we actually had a person at Pump Station 13 that was able to respond quickly because we had a wet weather plan going that day. It was February 6th, which is a lot of rain on that day. Took us a bit of time to investigate the cause of the spill. We were able to neutralize it right away. It's a secondary force main, so we were able to divert flow to the primary force main and have this empty, not continuing to spill. So that was fortunate. And then we quickly posted signs to avoid contact with the water, so the public was aware, and the folks in the rowing club were made aware through our notification of county health. They get the word out when there's a spill like this anywhere in Marin County. And we quickly did sampling upstream, downstream, and at the discharge point, and continued for 2 days. Well, it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And county health approved us discontinuing sampling then because it was evidence that the water quality in the affected receiving waters had returned to background levels. And so it went quite quickly. It was during rain, and from an engineering standpoint, the residence time, the time that the water is sets in one location is really reduced during storm events for any kind of spill. And so even though it sounds like a lot, 88,000 gallons, it's a drop in the proverbial river, in terms of what was moving through that system at that time. So really fortunate, not a long lasting impact, and no reports of any illnesses, as county health noted. So we were delayed in investigating because there's a shipping container that was used for storage by Bon Air Center that was set up on top of where the spill was. So they took them about 4 or 5 days to get that moved. And then we had wet weather, and it was a 4-inch storm last Thursday. So we had to wait for that to go by. And then Friday, we finally got a chance to excavate. And we discovered that there were longitudinal cracks along the top of the force main that were 14 feet in length on both sides of the crown. So it really was evident that not just one thing happened when we were, turning off valves and changing our operations. It was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were, because there was already a defective pipe in place. Well, that was only part of the picture. We also saw that there were installations on top of the pipe. There was actually a fence post, and the concrete that went around the fence post was poured onto the force main, because the force main is only 31 inches below ground surface, 2.5 feet. So very shallow in that location, installed in 1965. So it's 60-year-old pipe. And over the years, this is an abandoned fence post, and post hole concrete poured onto the force main. And then there was also a plug of concrete poured around the guy wire for a PG&E power pole on the force main, maybe a few inches above. Okay, so you got this weight right over the force main. Then you have a concrete slab and a shipping container full of equipment that's been sitting on a shallow force main for decades. Okay, so we were thinking, okay, this maybe was an external impact. But then this week, we finally had a chance to dewater the force main and put our award-winning CCTV crew to work. Like, let's do a diagnostic. And I reviewed the video today. This is news, but what we discovered was there's a high point at that location in the force main where there's evidence of gas corrosion of the cylinder pipe, steel cylinder pipe, and the concrete. So that was a weak point. And what we do, as a design engineer, I've designed force mains, and anytime you have a high point, you put an air relief valve. And there's no air relief valve there. So as of today, the light bulb went out that even though there were these external contributing factors that didn't help this poor force main over the decades, there was this high point and uneven corrosion. So the good news is the force main appears to be in good shape, about 35 to 40 feet on either side of the spill site. But for that 70-foot section, we have severe corrosion of the force main due to this high point and the hydrogen sulfide gas that corrodes the interior of the pipe. So that's what we're in the process of putting together for our technical report to the Regional Water Board. So this is a little advanced preview of what that report will take. But the solution, we're looking at options to get the secondary force main back into service because it's helpful to have for maintenance and other purposes, wet weather management. But we're formulating the long-term corrective action, but relieved to learn that this wasn't a whole systemic issue with this force main. It appears to be an isolated location. So that's a report on the spill so far.
Did you dig up?
Did
a
you say there's
slab?
some piping here?
Did you?
So
Did you say there was some piping here? in the
Piping
building?
here?
You brought something in?
yeah, I'm not. Oh, you want to see? Yeah, I have a section of the pipe in the
Piece of the
back
pipe
there.
that broke?
Hmm?
Is that what you asked?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do.
Did you have to dig up a slab? And who owns
Yeah.
the land?
Yes, Bon Air Center.
The Bon Air Center.
Who owns the shipping container?
Bon Air Center. Yeah.
Okay. And you did dig up a slab that we.
Yes, yeah.
Are we
used-
putting the shipping container somewhere else?
Well, it's on our force main, a few parking lot spaces back down the.
We'll work with them on that.
Yeah, we'll work with it. I don't think any of us thought that it was that shallow. With force mains, it's not the same as gravity where you can really, locate the system. Force mains are more difficult to locate.
So it should be lower.
It ought to be at least, minimum of 4 feet. 6 feet is preferable.
You can't lower it too much because
It is what it is now.
It's where it is. Force mains are nice that you don't have to worry about grade. They can go up and down. You want it to more or less be online, but even that's not critical because it's a pressure pipe.
Thank you. That was very exciting.
It was interesting. I
was
told
a good
the
story.
field staff working with me that they were sewer CSI. So don't destroy the pipe. Be careful. And they did a great job hydro excavating so that we have good pictures of what the pipe looked like. And because they had to dig down with the excavator, but then they used our VACCON. Our new VACCON truck was a great tool to do jetting and then hydro excavate. Use the vacuum in the VACCON to pull out the dirt and the soil and the water up into the tank. So we have good pictures of what the pipe looks like with its defects. And so that's where the longitudinal cracks, that's not easy to do, in terms of excavating down and then having the pipe intact to be able to do the diagnostic. So it was really fantastic work by our field crews.
What is that piece of pipe made of?
It's known as reinforced concrete cylinder pipe, RCCP, and it's a steel cylinder that's surrounded on both sides, on the outside by reinforced concrete with wires in it, and on the inside just by cementitious material. That particular cross section shows degradation of the steel cylinder and complete loss of the interior cementitious portion.
Yep.
And it is 60 years old.
I was going to say.
Older than me.
I'm
but
a
not
little-
much.
I'm a little older than that and I'm having trouble with my pipes too. So
All right, that was the second item?
Yeah, and I got two more to go.
Okay.
The third item is a spill was avoided last Thursday at Almanar and Los Cerros in Greenbrae, thanks to our smart cover early alarm system and a good plan by O&M staff to have storm patrol to have 2 extra folks out because it was a big storm predicted. It was a 4-inch storm, I believe, in Kentfield. This is nearby Greenbrae. And so I think the high water level was getting up to 64 inches above, the lower pipe elevation. And I think the manhole elevation is like 78. So it was 14 inches. It was rising and surcharging, and we were able to get out there, and there was a big rock that was in the sewer that was blocking, the 6-inch outflow point. Again, a reminder of how our narrow diameter sewers are a challenge to manage. This should be an 8-inch minimum, and the rock might have passed, but the 6-inch sewer and the manhole, it came real close to being a big spill. Thanks to our planning and thanks to our surveillance system, the remote monitoring, we prevented a spill that was going to happen. So I'd like to report. That was on February 13th. So February 6th, February 13th, we've had some, it's just another season of wet weather in Ross Valley Sanitary District. So now finally, my fourth item is a little bit of an extensive report because there's a lot going on with the local agency formation commission of Marin County, also known as LAFCO. Felicia and I attended the LAFCO meeting this past Thursday evening, February 13th, just after we prevented that spill. And there were 3 items on the LAFCO agenda that affect RVSD. We also attended with Fernanda Stefanik of SD2, who we worked with on the first item. The first item was boundary changes between SD2 and RVSD. And if you have to think back a little ways, but we had a resolution in October of 2023 that said that we were comfortable moving forward with the boundary adjustment between our agencies based on the dye testing that we worked together on and confirmed which addresses along our boundary were truly in each other's districts. There was, if you might recall, I think there were 6 properties that changed hands, as it were, 6 properties that belong in our district that were in theirs and vice versa. And then this action was augmented by some other practical considerations, like there's a parcel owned by the town of Corte Madera with no sewer service that was in our district, but really belongs in their district as the town of Corte Madera. So there were some boundary changes that we worked through, and it was a nice accomplishment. It took SD2 a few more months to approve their resolution, and it looked like we were ready to go about a year ago. But then LAFCO, who was dusting off the wastewater municipal services review for Central Marin, which is the second item that we were there for, they learned through that review that the sphere of influence for RVSD had not been updated when RVSD annexed the Larkspur sanitation area in 1993. So that Larkspur sanitation area was still not recognized in LAFCO as a sphere of influence of RVSD. Well, why does that matter? Well, it gave us no basis for doing the boundary adjustment with SD2 because the areas are affected within that quote unquote Larkspur annexation area that wasn't officially part of our sphere of influence. So by doing the MSR, they made that change, recognizing that indeed Larkspur is in our sphere of influence. And they also made a minor adjustment on the outer edge of San Quentin Village because the Caltrans property next to the Richmond Bridge, which discharges sewage into San Quentin Village, isn't recognized in RVSD's sphere of influence either. And so that was added as a clerical change. And so the boundary changes then were, so we were there to answer any questions and affirm, our support of these changes. There's some good questions about, did all the property owners acquiesce to this change? And we said, yes, they did. They each signed the agreements and the same questions that you asked, all that 1.5 years ago. Yeah. So it went real well. So as I mentioned, the second item was this MSR, which corrected the sphere of influence boundary. And that we didn't really provide comment in person. We were just able to answer questions as necessary. Then the third item, which was postponed, was a proposed action on RVSD annexing that portion of the San Quentin property, the state property gun range that's proposed for housing development known as Oak Hill, which you talked about earlier. And so that was postponed on a technicality. I believe the state was going to revise the map in some way, and they were waiting on the state to provide the documentation. Now, I think the board's aware you were copied on a letter. We provided comment on the MSR, so we didn't speak about that so much, except we did provide a comment reiterating RVSD's willingness, because it's been in our business plan. We're willing to implement LAFCO's recommendation to initiate the annexation of the San Quentin Village Sewer Maintenance District, which is currently managed by the county. It's the only sewer maintenance district remaining under county jurisdiction. And so the county is very interested in, as they say, not being in the sewer business. And so we affirmed, our willingness to implement that. But I was able to let the LAFCO members know in person that we didn't want to create an island of an annexation of a group of parcels that were isolated and not connected to the boundary of our district. Especially considering the circumstances that wastewater flows through which would be called a service area gap, between, which is basically the prison property. So the comments I made was that we're in support of that annexation, but that we believe that we should annex the entire sphere of influence area, which includes the housing site, the San Quentin Village District, the Caltrans property, which is not in the San Quentin Village District, but discharges to it. So those three things, as well as the CDCR's prison. This annexation would eliminate a service area gap, in the LAFCO map in this area, and help address the fact that the prison is subsidizing sewer rates of the 45 parcels of the San Quentin Village, as well as the Caltrans property. This subsidy by CDCR occurs through the rates it currently pays CMSA for treatment through a contract that expires in June of this year. Now, while there are discussions between CMSA and CDCR to renew this contract, we have reached out to CDCR to indicate our interest at RVSD in resuming this contract with the prison in conjunction with the proposed annexation, which should be completed this calendar year. And these discussions are ongoing. RVSD had the contract with CDCR's San Quentin prison for 30 years before CMSA began its service contract in 2012. And we believe it's the right time to resume this arrangement in conjunction with the annexation. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Board members, any comments or questions?
On that, no.
When do you think LAFCO is going to bring up the full annexation question?
Well, it's brought up. We're working on it. So we met with LAFCO last Tuesday, the 11th, and had a productive conversation about annexing not only the village and all of the process that we went through to annex Murray Park, that we would implement at the village, but with Caltrans and the prison as well.
Yeah, what you mean with the staff after the meeting? You met at the meeting, but did you meet with staff too, or that?
Yeah, we met with staff on Tuesday, and so on Thursday we made those comments to the LAFCO board
on Thursday.
Okay. That, just letting them know, reiterating our written comments in the MSR about our interest in annexing the whole sphere of influence area, just for the purpose of good governance, that have all the wastewater where it flows be under one service area, and then whatever arrangements are made, that's fine. And all parties can have those discussions, but it's just for a good oversight governance. And so the meeting with staff was the previous Tuesday, the 11th. It was over an hour. And we're going to initiate the necessary paperwork to annex the entire sphere of influence area.
Because previously, I mean, parts of it now aren't assigned to any sanitary district. Right. Okay. And that's definitely what LAFCO wants. LAFCO wants somebody to be responsible for providing sewer service. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, it was,
A no-brainer.
it was, yeah, it speaks to their mission, and that we highlighted that there's a service area gap and that we are, look forward to working with them to help fill it. And I'll make a point too and we made the point in the letter that there was a service area gap between SD2 and RVSD, was the Redwood High School.
Mhm,
It actually wasn't in either of our districts
mhm.
until it was just approved, Thursday. So SD2 has been collecting sewer service charges and they've been providing that service, but it wasn't officially in the boundary of their district. And so, that's something I think we can, leave things better than what we found them by working on these service area gaps.
This is the next episode of Sewer Service CSI.
So anyway, thanks for listening to my long report, but a lot of things we're working on these days.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, item number 10, verbal report by board members and request for future items. Yes.
Sure. Three of us went down to the CASA meeting in Palm Springs. And this is the first time that I've heard in all the years them really talk extensively about AI in wastewater. And it's actually very exciting. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of work in the artificial intelligence in the treatment of wastewater. And so I think we're in for a wild ride here in how it's going to get used and who are going to be the players in doing that. And I mean, just to give you an example, and they gave an example that AI is able to find a tumor in a mammogram 5 years before a human being, a doctor, could see that same tumor. And that in wastewater, for instance, we have 14 years of CCTV footage of all of our pipes. And to have somebody sit down and start tediously going through and looking at all the different pipes would be an impossibility and not reasonable. But if you could train an AI agent to go through and start looking at the CCTV things and noticing
Anomalies.
like, we look over here at pump station 13 and we see that it's been changing very, very gradually. And a human eye might not see that, but an AI agent could definitely see that and bring it to our attention and make our job much, much easier and efficient. And that's coming up.
I was going to speak about CASA as well. It's excellent as usual, but we also had a big presentation on verbal yoga. And that is how, we use it here because our staff approaches people, they need to get on the private property to look at the easement, and people can be hostile and how to handle it. And I thought, what a great idea. And then Steve told me that our staff does verbal yoga, every 2 years or so. And in fact, the speaker mentioned it. Oh, I've worked with, Ross Valley Sand. So it was really an excellent presentation and very germane to our business.
Thank you. Anybody else have any reports?
I won't report on CASA because they have, but I will tell you that I saw, I think I mentioned this briefly earlier, a next door post about a sewer spill on private property in Larkspur. And the person was saying, what do I do? It's been going on a week. Oh, God. And so I put in people saying, who do you call? Who do you call? And I said, we have a video on this, and call the Ross Valley Sanitary District, this number, and I attached the video. And then I reported it to management. Steve was in a meeting, so I spoke to Felicia, who put Paul on it, and Paul's all over it. They finally fixed it. It's at a property that seems to be problematic with this type of thing. I'm not sure their maintenance is ongoing and up to par, but Paul has agreed that he's going to keep on top of that, and he'll report to Marin County Health if he feels that the cleanup is not sufficient in an appropriate amount of time. And if you have anything to say about
It's
that,
on
that's fine.
private property, right? That's
It is
not
on-
our
It's
system,
not
but
ours,
just-
but still, we want
Good
to
idea.
get out there anytime we can to resolve things before they get,
Give them a grant.
well, I think this organization may need more like a kick in the pants than a grant, but that's okay. Well,
I mentioned that Paul was, it was on President's Day, so Paul took care of it on a
Oh.
holiday.
Thank you. All right. Item number 11, consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull from consent? Seeing none, I'll
I move
Entertain
the
a motion.
consent calendar.
thank you.
second,
Thank you. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Thank
Michael, consent calendar?
Yep.
Aye. Okay, I thought you were in the restroom, but we were functioning. Thank you very much. Item number 12, consideration of resolution 251663, declaring the property at 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle in Larkspur exempt surplus land and authorizing the general manager to develop a request for qualifications or proposal for sale or lease consideration at a future board meeting. Steve, I presume.
Yes, thank you, President Silla and members of the board. Item 12 discusses the next step proposed by staff for disposing of the Larkspur Landing property. As you've heard in my recent reports, we've been diligently working. O&M department's done a great job of moving our operations from the landing, as we call it, to our facilities here at 1111 Anderson, making use of our new warehouse, expanding our footprint with cooperation from Comcast, and little by little getting all of our maintenance activities centered here. There's still a few functions at the landing, but as I describe in the staff report, we have a 4-room utility building there that we do actively use for storage for mostly of our repair crew activities, for storing pipes and, well, yeah, chemicals and other equipment for the repair crew, materials. So Larkspur Landing, we've really ceased our operational footprint there, except for right around Pump Station 10. Where we actually, as it turns out, we have to have a piece of property adjacent to our parcel that houses Pump Station 10 to even access Pump Station 10. It's just the way, the boundary of that parcel is the wall of the pump station building. So to get around it, we have to be able to maintain at least a piece of our property at the Larkspur
Should we get an easement?
Right. Well, I think we enjoy property ownership at parcels at our pump stations throughout our system, whether it's pump station 15 or 13 or 20 that we're working on now, 12 over by the Chevron. If you look at the parcel map, there's a little square by the pump station, and that's what we own. And that's the case here at Pump Station 10, but it's not large enough for us to have a perimeter area to actually do the work it takes to keep it going. It pumps every drop of wastewater east of Highway 101 in our district to the CMSA treatment plant. So it's a vital piece of infrastructure. So we've really called it out. So there's several items here in the report, and it picks up where we left off last month, where Bryant Sparkman and Riley Hurd gave us some overviews of the disposition choices that we have in compliance with the Surplus Land Act. Well, of course, I should not leave out Andrea, our district counsel, who also gave a great overview of the SLA provisions and the choices we have about do we declare surplus like we did with 2960 Kerner and then see what proposals come in and whether we need to negotiate with different parties for a period of up to, or for 90-day periods in good faith negotiations, which are defined but have some vagueness to their definition, which creates some legal risk. So we did that process with 2960, and as I mentioned in the staff report, there were no affordable housing developers that came forward during that 60-day period of a traditional surplus land declaration, right? And so we didn't have to enter into 90-day negotiations with affordable housing developers for 2960. But we did have to record a covenant, or was that the right word? That expressly stated, and it runs with the property, so the folks that purchased 2960, if they should choose to develop housing at that site, they have to follow the covenant that we established to be in compliance with SLA, which basically stated 25% of the housing that's developed at Kerner would be affordable by the definitions in statute. So yeah, even Kerner has its strings attached because it was land owned by a public agency, and pursuant to AB 1486, which was passed back in 2019 or 2020 or something like that. So it's a new set of rules for public agencies disposing of surplus land. So as the staff report describes, we have a choice, and we talked about last month, of either surplus land or what is this exempt surplus land. It's not that it's exempt from the law and that we just go off and do what we want. There's certain conditions that you have to meet and continue to show that you meet in the future to be exempt surplus land. And they boil down to 3 main characteristics, although there's 7 conditions that are laid out in the draft resolution. But it boils down to, is the site over 10 acres, which ours is? Would a future development have 300 units of housing, which ours could, because the city of Larkspur has designated in the general plan that our site should have 250 to 350 roughly units. So 300 is the midpoint value of that range that the city of Larkspur has established in the general plan. That's the second condition. And the third condition is if of those housing units, 25% shall be affordable housing as defined by the SLA. And so that equates, if it's 300 units even, then it'd be 75 units that would have to meet the definitions of affordable housing. So if a public agency declares exempt surplus land and meets these conditions, as well as some others that are laid out in the staff report and resolution before you, then we don't have a 60-day period to entertain an open application process with all affordable housing developers, nor do we then subsequently have to negotiate for 90 days in good faith with each and every one of those developers that may come forward, which, based on what Bryant Sparkman was telling us, there's at least 20 viable entities that have come forward that are interested in this property. So if we did the traditional surplus declaration, we could be looking at 20 separate negotiations in good faith. And if we don't do it in good faith, we could have legal risk in each and every one of those 20 separate negotiations, if that's what would come about. So we saw benefit in recommending to the board an exempt surplus land declaration that you would consider, which would then enable us, as I mentioned, not to have to do the 60 and 90-day period activities mandated by SLA, but then to move past that and actually do a request for proposal and invite proposals from would-be developers that would meet the conditions of the exempt surplus land definition, and see and by doing so, learn what the market would support as a development at our site. We just don't know, what the development proposals are going to look like. They could be a combination of, they could be a purchase sale agreement, it could be ground lease, it could be a combination thereof. We're not completely sure what the developer community would respond to our site with, what kind of package they would respond with. Not until we put it out there. Now, by doing this declaration, you're not locking yourselves, we are not locking ourselves into one path. We can go through a process of receiving proposals, evaluating them with objective criteria. And if we find that none of them meet what those objective criteria are, which could include, track record of the developer, financing plan, just all these assurances that we want to see to minimize the risk to the district and its ratepayers. We have the opportunity, and we may learn too, that we've heard some folks say, maybe that's more density than is financially feasible. We've heard that along the way, that, sometimes more density doesn't mean more financial gain. It actually, there's an optimization exercise that happens on a given site. So what if we learn nobody wants to do 300 units? Well, then we can't meet the exempt criteria. Well, HCD staff, who I may have mentioned we worked with to draft the resolutions, indicated to us that there's an option, another exemption. This one's called the H exemption. There's one called the N exemption, where we can, as a public agency, if it helps us meet our mission, we can go forward with an alternative. And so that we can work that out later. But HCD has indicated that there's an option for us to continue to avoid the more protracted surplus land negotiation process I described, if the 300 unit approach doesn't pan out from a market standpoint. Let's say, the developer comes back and says, yeah, I think 250 is more like what we want to do. Well, there might be a path for us to go that way if there aren't other developers that meet all objective criteria at what we've defined in the exempt surplus land proposal. So I just wanted to, I hope that's clear, that we're not locked in to this. This just opens the door to entertaining and learning, entertaining offers and learning what the market might support at our site. And we're really looking for a development partner that we would negotiate an agreement with, that is a viable long-term partner, with a track record, with a good reputation, a strong financing capability, and hopefully a relationship with the city of Larkspur, that of trust, all those things we'll be looking at, because the importance of having the trust and partnership with the city of Larkspur. So all those things would come down the line. This is, to do anything, we have to declare this property surplus. And then what we're asking in this package is your permission to work on a request for proposal right away. Really get the team together, structure the request for proposals or qualifications. The reason why we might do a request for qualifications is we can screen out applicants that way and not have, more of a free for all and have a lot of marginally qualified applicants versus those who might, show qualifications and track record. And then we refine the number of proposals we get later. So it might be a two-step process. Really with the goal of meeting our fiduciary duty here at this site, getting, a sustainable, financially responsible solution that supports the local community, supports the city of Larkspur's goals, and move forward. And so that's where our recommendation is coming from, and as well as our team. And then we're open to having the board consider at a future board meeting, that product, so that, we don't have to do the RF. We can bring the draft RFQ to you, so that you feel comfortable where it's headed. And so with that, that's
right,
my
thank you very
introduction.
much.
Thanks for listening. I hope I covered everything. Maybe
Board
too
members,
much.
questions,
thank you.
comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I did, and I think you've answered it, Steve, because my question was, does this limit widespread interest in the property? And we don't know, is what we're going to test the market and find out, and we can drop back and do something else. I mean, I approve, I like that idea. And then I was worried, does this reduce the property value? And the same thing, we'll find out. So we're gonna, yeah. I mean, those were my questions. And who were the 20 entities interested in to negotiate? I mean, it was, had he been contacted by 20? Ooh,
Yes, at least.
But that.
But remember, a lot of years.
Public entities who are eligible under, who we'd put it up for without an exemption?
Remember, it's not just public entities that get for the notice of availability and the 60-day period.
Mhm.
It's certain land use authorities plus a whole list of developers that sign up with the state to be on the list that do affordable housing projects.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
a number of private developers, hundreds are probably on that list for the
Okay.
state.
like Dorfman.
And venture. I'm just glad that you did the pump station 10 property exclusion, so we'll never have any issue about driving to our own location. So that makes a lot of sense. Well
With-
thought out. I think we learned a few lessons recently, and so that was well done. We've, as both a board, we've spoken about this property a lot, and I've spoken about this agenda item with Steve at length. So I'm fully in support of this. I don't have any other questions. I know what we're doing. We're starting a process, and we're going to do the best for our ratepayers and for our community.
Great, thank you. Pam?
Sorry, I have questions.
Okay.
Sorry, Steve knows that. I'll be nice. I just want to, because we talked a lot about the lake, and that was sort of, I thought, designated for open space as part of when we pull the deal together, or however. Is that still on there because it's not in the resolution?
Thanks for that question. There is, you're right, and as we've discussed over the years, we're working with the city of Larkspur cooperatively, and they initially took the old housing development proposal and just made a proposal to use that as the open space designation. And we're interested in open space where it's appropriate on the site, at the staff level, at the board level. And so we responded by saying, yes, but maybe we could use some of our field work we've done and provide you a more refined footprint or polygon, on a map that you can use to set aside this open space permanently. The lake isn't on our property, but just adjacent. And there's then a grove of oak trees that are of high enough diameter to be known as heritage trees. So it's a very valuable habitat that's on our property. And so we worked with the city of Larkspur, and we provided them GIS files of our wetlands delineation that we performed as part of our cleanup project, our environmental review then, as well as using an aerial map and tracing the drip line of all of the oak trees so that there's enough of a separation from the trunk, to where the boundary of the open space official area is. So as part of the general plan, then city staff took that work that we provided them and recorded it on the general plan map, so that area is preserved as open space. And it's adjacent to that lake area, but doesn't include the lake itself. It includes the drainage that comes out of the lake there. Yeah. That are
It's
wet.
popular for people to hike and dog walk, and it's a real little community up there. So, but that doesn't, so it's not our property.
The lake isn't, but
It's county. Is it county open
it's
space?
City of Larkspur Miwok Park.
Miwok Park.
And
The city's park.
yeah, and so this
Okay.
area of our property is adjacent and would be a logical addition to that.
I don't know
park.
why I thought that lake was ours.
It's kind of.
Because they wanted us to do work on it.
103.
I'm sorry,
It
what?
was the
Two
map
people.
that shows the lake.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's right by the north arrow. That's right.
Okay. So the other question I have, and it might not be relevant, but there's a deed restriction on Kerner. Is that because you said the future housing, the 25? Okay. And that would not apply to us to do any kind of a deed restriction?
Well, we need to comply with the Surplus Land Act, one way or the other, right? And so in the case where we dispose of the property with a nonprofit that doesn't build housing,
Mhm.
we just put in a deed restriction that if housing were developed, a certain amount would be affordable. In this case, our crystal ball tells us the proposals on this property will probably include housing. And so there'll be some kind of documentation that will need to run with the property as part of our transaction. So if it were to sell, there would be something recorded for this to qualify for exempt surplus land in perpetuity. And Andrea, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it would have to be deed restricted. The RFP, RFQ would be designed to only allow for proposals that would restrict it to 325% over 10 acres, et cetera. So that would effectively be a deed restriction into the future and be a very clear requirement of any sort of transactional documents that are part of the transaction. That would be a requirement.
And would you need an exact number, or could you move that number back to 250 or 350?
Well, the exemption, as Steve described, the exemption we're under, this subsection H, is pretty specific to 300 units and then 25%. There may be another path. If there are fewer units, we would get there if staff doesn't see and the consulting team doesn't see what we want to see out of what we, what the community offers in response to an RFP.
Okay. And then a couple of quick things. Transportation is not in here. I don't think a study's been done. Does it need to be? It's a lot of housing here. And I don't, what?
There's 580, there's the airport.
We're not a,
Ferry and bus stations right there.
no, I mean the bottleneck that happens to get onto the freeway to Richmond and all that. Just why we didn't address anything, or do
Yes,
we have to? I
So
guess?
I think Riley Hurd may have touched on this in his presentation last month, but when the city of Larkspur adopted the general plan and the housing element on September 4th of last year, they also adopted an EIR for the general plan and housing element, which took into account and disclosed in transportation impacts and mitigation measures.
Okay. I think that's,
At least 300, isn't it? It's at least 325.
Yeah, the city of Larkspur numbers are 25 to 35 units per acre. And so the math is straightforward. There's 250 to 350 because if it's 10 acres. So the range, right. Yeah. City of Larkspur and the state are two different guideposts. It gets confusing, and yeah, you can elaborate on this, but the state exemption sets us at 300 units minimum, and 25% of those have to be affordable, which at 300 is 75 units. Okay. The city of Larkspur's general plan says 250 to 350 range, and 20% have to be affordable. So at the low end of the range, 250 units, then 20% is 50 units. So Larkspur would be content with 50. State wants at least 75. And so, there are those different paths, but at least, the interest that's been expressed here at the board of having affordable housing as part of this development will, come to be through this pathway. And even if we have to go another path of 250, the city will still require that. So there is something there.
thank you. This thing about it says lower income households on letter E. Can it say low? I mean, lower is a range, and from some of the things I've seen, it's not low or lower. What's happening out there, things.
This is from the government code. It's from the statute. So as you see, it says whereas,
Says lower.
yes. So they're just quoting what the government code
okay.
says.
Yeah, this draft resolution was actually reviewed by HCD staff,
Okay.
and we had an email saying it was acceptable. And I think they're just reviewing it to make sure we're using
they're
actual
reviewing it.
statutory language.
So the only thing I want is a community health center. And then I won't say another word.
Well,
I
and
mean, come on, this is this constituents' money. We're dealing with millions and millions and millions and millions to clean it up. Couldn't we not throw something in there with, maybe, anyway?
I don't think that's what Larkspur said in their general plan they want the property to be used for,
Oh,
unfortunately.
they don't want nothing downtown, is why they want the property.
yeah,
But, so anyway, I just, you
it's,
can tell Larkspur.
yeah, I think our proposal doesn't rule that out. We're going to have this competitive process to get qualifications and proposals. And, I think we as staff and you as a board are interested in the quality of life of people that live in that area and want it to be enhanced. And we're going to be looking at the whole package and, other multifamily projects do include features like that. And
Mhm.
so,
They do.
it certainly won't be discouraged. And I think we're all in agreement that we want something to be left here that we're all proud of. And if that were part of it, I think we would feel proud of that.
Indoor pool too.
So I think,
It's
the
all right.
advice that we get from our consultants and is not to be too prescriptive in our RFP, RFQ, but let, the creativity and the finance ability of different proposals come forward that the market would support. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
I'll,
Appreciate
if
your-
there are no more questions, I'll entertain a
sure.
motion.
Point of information,
Oh, yeah?
please, open to public comment.
Sorry, I didn't, do we have, oh, I'm sorry. It is, yeah, pardon me. It's different from CMSA where we actually see the names pop up when people come in. Are there any folks who want to raise their hand and give public comment on this item? Apologies. All right. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the
Sure.
board.
All I want to say is that it's been a long 12 years since we were talking to a gentleman who wanted to build a community farm and a fish farm on that property. And so it's been a long way, and I'm glad to be moving forward at this point. So I move that we adopt resolution 25-1663 declaring the property at 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle in Larkspur, California, excluding up to 0.5 acre portion needed for district's ongoing use as exempt surplus land, and authorize the general manager to develop a request for qualifications and or proposals for its sale or lease for consideration at a future board meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I thought you might ask for a roll call vote, but
Yeah, I think it is.
we didn't need a roll call vote.
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. Item number 13, consideration of adopting resolution number 25-1664 to declare an emergency for rehabilitation of the storm damaged sewer main and lower laterals at 125 to 137 Hillside Avenue in Kentfield. Steve.
Yes, I'll introduce the item. I think we have Phil Benedetti available. He's working remotely this week from the Ross Valley offices in Bend, Oregon. Bend,
In
Oregon.
Bend, Oregon. Great.
So or annexed. So I'll ask him to provide some details because he's been at the site. He took or I don't know if he took this picture, but it's quite a site. So the upshot is, we will address defects and problems as they come up, and we use our ordinance 110 to get 3 bids and do this when we come across some urgent matters. But this was an emergency. We had a storm. I think it was on the February 4th. It was a Tuesday, I think, where the winds were high in Kentfield near the Ross border along Hillside, which is right off near the Woodland Market and Kent Avenue in that area. And a tree blew over and destroyed a sewer rod hole and the attached clay sewer, and then 2 lower laterals coming down the hillside, just obliterated. Now, because it was the middle of the day, there wasn't, a big sewage management problem. And when we were made aware of the issue, we responded quickly, and we were able to establish kind of a temporary situation there. But as the picture shows, there was this is a utility corridor going down this property boundary, serving a lot of houses, including a high pressure gas main. And it looks like water lines and electric conduit, in addition to our sewer line. So it was a kind of a utility corridor and a real mess when the roots uprooted everything. But it was amazing that the gas line stayed in place, because it was a high pressure line. And Paul and Phil can fill in the gaps here, but it actually dislodged a storm drain, pulled it up from pier supports, and it didn't break, which is a miracle, because there would have been a serious emergency if that gas main had broken. So our staff responded quickly, but we were asking the board's permission here. As per our financial policy, within 14 days of the event, we can declare the emergency and still do a sole source contract per our financial policies. So yeah, we didn't want to spend time calling around and getting 3 quotes. We wanted to get somebody on site immediately, and Phil helped make that happen, working with, I think, JNG was the company that we had hired for this, and Jesus and his group came right out. So we're just asking for the declaration of emergency to authorize the sole source contractor work, and then we will come back on a monthly basis until we terminate the emergency condition. And so that's the proposal. And then Phil, though, I'd like you to add in any details about the work. And I think there was another lateral that had to be reconnected. And also the pipe has a history too. It's like a high frequency pipe, with a lot of defects. So Phil.
Yeah, hey, so that pipe there up in on the hillside that goes up, serving about 3 houses on hillside. The 2 laterals that are near the top on the rod hole, you can see on the sketch that's provided in the board packet. The 2 laterals, after that tree got uprooted, they were essentially without sewer service for a matter of a couple of days until we were able to get them temped back in. And luckily J&G was able to respond to that issue, and we got them temporarily reconnected, so that they could resume using water in their homes. The main there is about 180 feet long. It was actually a 5-inch existing pipe, which is somewhat rare to find, but it was a high frequency cleaning line. There were a number of issues with it being on a steep hill the way that it was installed. There were a couple of 90-degree bends in the pipe, and our contractor is addressing all of that right now. The pipe was on a 6-month flush previously, and after this work is completed, it will be on a standard maintenance schedule. So it was a good opportunity to address that whole part of our system there. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I hear when talk about annexing other people's systems, and they say, well, that we don't want to annex that system because it's got all kinds of problems, right? How about our own system with the 90-degree bends? I mean, we got stories like this throughout our system too. So they come up, and now it's an opportunity to really, to make the system excellent.
So they were without they were without sewer service for 2 days. Is that what you said?
Yeah, one of the properties had lost water service for a moment as well. So he was kind of like, well, okay, okay, I don't have running water, so it doesn't really matter.
Winter is a beach
but-
out.
It's coming in.
Yeah, but yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he was hunkered down because he was having a number of utility issues going on, and there was that storm drain that we were mentioning got ripped out by the gas line. But then the other property, yeah, they I don't know if they checked into an Airbnb for a night or what, but they had they have a 3-year-old, and it was kind of turned it into a hot mess, but we were able to get it reinstated without them, you know, without too much of an issue there. So yeah.
Has the root
Yeah.
been removed yet? The tree was,
So the tree, if you look at the photo, the root ball of that tree is grown around that high pressure gas line, and it's kind of an anomaly. You can see one end of it going in one direction, and where the other end should be is there's no pipe there. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on in there, but PG&E, after talking to them, they are going to address the gas line after we have completed our work, which we're grateful for, so that we can install what we need to, and then PG&E can begin their gas line work without overlapping contractors and additional safety concerns for what should just be normal sewer work.
All right. Thank you. Responding to crises in Kentfield. Any other questions?
Yep.
Uh,
Do we need to do any hillside strengthening there? Similar to 30 Wood and Ellsworth and properties like that where we have sewers on hills?
I did not see any, issues of slope instability on this property. They have a storm drain system that conveys water down through the upper properties. The other portion kind of, I didn't see any drain issues stormwater drainage issues related to our sewer main.
Take
But
a look when you're out there.
yeah, but as we, anytime we excavate in a steep slope, we're sure to employ our best management practices for retaining the soil in place.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah,
is
we
there
also
a
have a-
minimum for emergency?
What's that?
Is there a minimum for an emergency? I mean, yeah, we might, if we have a $5,000 emergency and we need a contractor, does it have to come to the board? Is there some limit?
This is above his authority, right?
Right, but there's also certain dollar limits with respect to public bidding, and that would be under the minimum that would require public bidding in the first place. So that would both be within the general manager's discretion as well as below the need to go out for multiple bids.
Okay.
5,000.
And so this is the below your minimum or maximum, Steve? What's the limiting number on 56,000?
Your
So,
your authority, but
Requires a public bid unless it's an emergency.
right. So there's a dollar amount that's his authority, but there's separate from that, there's a dollar amount above which requires
Thought it was
getting
200,000.
multiple
so
formal public bidding.
the
Sorry, go ahead.
So I can shed a little light on that part of it. So when we adopted the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, we increased our limit of construction work that does not require any bidding process per public contract code. It was extended up to $60,000. I believe in this year I believe in January of this year, it was also increased up to $75,000. But then our financial policies require us to get three competitive, or three quotes for work underneath that threshold. And because of the timing of all of this, we were not able to get three quotes. So that's why we've brought it to the board for approval.
Okay,
All
thanks.
policies are being followed. Trust.
I'd like to make a motion.
Love for you to make a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution 25/1664 to declare an emergency for rehab of a storm damaged sewer main and lower laterals at 125 through dash 137 Hillside Avenue, Kentfield.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 14, consideration of adopting resolution number 25/1665, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for FY 24-25 gravity sewer improvements project number 958.
I'll just say, this is the environmental document disclosing environmental impacts and recommended mitigation measures for the next board item, where the board's considering awarding a contract for the fiscal year 24-25 gravity sewer improvements project.
Does
And,
anybody have any comments or questions about the CEQA required negative declaration? If we're fixing sewers, we're probably not hurting the environment, I think the point.
Yeah, and the
I'll make
key
a
is we want to do it and not hurt the environment at the
That's
same
true.
time.
We're trying to improve the environment. Okay, yes, please.
I have a motion. I'd move to adopt resolution 25/1665, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for fiscal year 24-25 gravity sewer improvement projects, which is project number 958.
Well, second.
Make a statement.
Sure.
Because we had talked about this and I've had community, and I think you have too, about fear that this was all around development for a large part in Fairfax.
Let's talk about that at the beginning of the next issue, because that's the.
Is that the next one?
that's the
Yeah,
one,
this is just the negative declaration. That's okay.
All right.
Okay, so we have a motion
roll
and a
call.
second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 15, consideration of awarding and authorizing the GM upon review and approval of council to execute construction contract for FY 24-25 gravity sewer improvements project with Glossage in the amount not to exceed $6,137,410. Steve.
Good. Thank you, President Silla. And this project scope actually is not the Fairfax project, the capacity project. There is a little piece in this project of high priority gravity sewer rehabilitation, but it's not the same project that you've been hearing from the community about, just being clear. So the fiscal 24-25 project has some pieces in along Valinas Road in Fairfax, and then also in the at the San Anselmo Fairfax border, Rutherford, Suffield, and Sir Francis Drake. It has some sewers in Wolf Canyon near Wolf Grade. And there's some work in the lowlands in Kentfield, in Barron's, McAllister, and Stadium Way that are priorities. Really, the vast majority of the scope is driven by our IAMP risk management system, where we assign risk scores based on consequences and likelihoods of failure of pipes based on condition assessment. And so Phil, our senior engineer, has gathers and keeps track of our higher priority gravity sewers of our 5,500 pipes that we have out there, and sorting them and making recommendations. And so this has been designed, gone out to bid, and then I'll hand it over to Phil to describe, the results of that exercise. I'll just, spoiler alert, the low bid was far below the engineer's estimate. And so we've really done well on our gravity sewer improvement projects with the prices we've been getting. Last year, before I hand it over to Phil, I had to shake my head, and I had to have my staff check the math, because we just did an annual report to the Regional Water Board through the CMSA MPDS permit. We have to do an annual report. And we, in last calendar year, replaced 4.4 miles of gravity sewer. I mean, that we weren't even in accelerated mode, and that matched the level of acceleration from years past. And it was just, we were just really working as a well-oiled team between us, construction management, the contractor, And we have the fortune now of having the same contractor get the low bid and have it be $2 million under engineer's estimate. So I just wanted to point out those positive developments. And, as I told Phil when he reported this to me, the future looks bright because we've seen it in last year and those numbers. Also over $10 million of capital work. The MPDS permit requires us to expend $15 million in 4 years. We did 10 million in one. So this is just good, good tidings. Nothing's perfect, but we're optimistic going forward. So I wanted to at least give that introduction, Phil. That from my perspective, this has met a lot of goals. Okay, Phil, could you describe like what were the bids like? There's a huge bid sheet that you gave us. Maybe you could help us distill what it's telling us.
Sure. So we received those 5 bids. We had one of them, the highest bidder was an outlier among outliers, I would say, for Ranger Pipelines. So I would kind of cluster it, or I'd go with more 4 responsive bids, just from reviewing that. But the low bidder, Glossage, they're they were able to take a close look at some of the pipelines that would scare away a lot of contractors or demand a higher cost for certain methods of replacement in certain areas. There's some spots that may be trickier looking traffic control, but I think Glossage has a lot of recent experience in the area and working with town of San Anselmo and the county as well, and they're able to to really target in on some of their prices and keep their mobilization costs down in all of the different areas. They are what you'll notice is looking at the price to replace each lateral is a bit lower for Glossage than the other contractors. They don't have they are not planning to make a lot of money off of each one of those items, on the varying lengths. They we have different line items for laterals of various lengths. So like from 5 to 10 feet is one price, from 10 to 20 is another. Across the board, they just kind of leave those numbers low, and they're able to they are able to make money in other areas because they can move through that kind of work so quickly. It's watching this contractor work on previous projects, they can really hammer out the lateral work quickly, which can tend to bog down a lot of contractors. So that's, I think, the big summarization of how they're able to provide us with this bid. We know, yes, it is quite a bit below the engineer's estimate. But as I, touched on, I think that they're looking at, some of the pipe method, some of the methods for pipe replacement that we've identified. They may be, we specified pipe reaming in a few locations, which tends to be a bit higher cost than pipe bursting, but the contractor, that method was identified to avoid sensitive utilities, but a skilled pipe bursting contractor could also can address that through other means and still pipe burst. So that may be a good part of their angle with this. So yeah, as Steve said, this was born out of our IAMP risk assessment model, and we're addressing the highest risk line is that segment on Bolinas and Sherman right there in Fairfax by the town hall, and we're taking care of that. And there's another whole area built around the number two highest risk segment of pipe, which is in San Anselmo along the Suffield portion coming off of Sir Francis Drake. The that area grew in scope because because of the proximity to a number of high frequency cleaning lines, and there's a lot of whole segment on Drake that's also being done in coordination with the town of San Anselmo's plans to pave that location on top of what were high frequency cleaning lines. So a lot of these areas, without going segment by segment, there's a lot of layers of them being a win-win-win situation for the district to address each one of these segments of pipe.
Yeah, well stated. And some of that low-lying pipe is in tidally influenced areas, so that there'll be a benefit of reducing salinity inputs to the treatment system, and it's good for the quality of the recycled water.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Is there going to be a payment moratorium on some of these projects after we're done here? Are we working with PG&E and CMSA to make sure that we're organizing with them? MMWD. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Well, we are coordinating with MMWD on Bolinas. They're replacing the water main coming down the street there from I think Deer Park. Is it Deer Park Villa is the name of that lower? Yep. They're replacing it from there basically down to Broadway along Bolinas, and we're coordinating our project with them. The town, I believe, has plans to pave Bolinas after that. In terms of PG&E, I don't know specifically, but I know that the town of Fairfax, we're right now trying to get together a utility coordination meeting because we have some other work planned for Fairfax as well. On the county side of things, we are working on streets in that area that do not currently have paving moratoriums, and we coordinate that work directly with the county and yeah, as I mentioned before with the town of San Anselmo, it's typical that the town will handle that coordination aspect between the utilities, but as best we can, we always reach out when we know of a specific project that they have in the area.
Okay, thank you. And then Steve mentioned this is not the Fairfax project we've been talking about, but after this and the Fairfax project, do you guys have a clue? And you can just ballpark it as to how many miles of sewer we would have replaced in the last 10 years?
Yeah, for that ballpark number, I would go right to our metrics report because we're tracking that, and as well as the capital program report. There's a table in the metrics report that gives you a running total of both in-house repair and capital over the last 12, 13 years.
But these aren't in the metrics report.
Oh, and so you use that as your starting point, and then you would add on, the project totals that we have in our project descriptions. So, right here with this item, I would go to 2.8 miles on this 24-25, right? And add that to the overall total.
Okay.
And then, Fairfax, I'd be spitballing, but it's probably about 2 miles, something like that, Phil.
Yeah, I was trying to find that real quick, but yeah, I believe it's about 2 miles for Fairfax.
Yeah, so these larger $6 million projects are usually on the order of 2-3 miles, and yeah. And
I also I don't have a question, but I want to make a little bit of a comment. This project and also the Fairfax project, when we talk about capacity improvements, we're talking about the wet weather flow of inflow and infiltration. So for example, on a typical day at CMSA, which of course is Ross Valley Sanitary in Corte Madera and San Rafael, they deal with about 9 million gallons per day, MGD. And recently they had a high, this was a couple of years ago, we've done some work, of 129 million gallons per day. But the recent flow was 116 million gallons per day. So these projects are not uh, planned on increasing the housing, which people are concerned with. We could double the population of San Anselmo and Fairfax, and we could take in West Marin, and we'd have that capacity. That's not going to be an issue. This is a matter of the stormwater inflowing into our system and overwhelming the plant at CMSA to the point where they have to blend. And this is what this is about. It's not about adding capacity for housing. We have plenty of that, more than we need. This is all about stormwater inflow.
Yeah, well stated. And there's really two prongs to that. There's the work we do in the upper sewer system to control I&I, which helps the treatment plant be more resilient. And then we designed in the trunk lines, like the one that we're talking about this fall for Fairfax, not this project, but a different project, that will make the pipes larger in the upper system to convey the stormwater that comes in so that it doesn't overflow onto the streets and into buildings.
Yeah, so people have been concerned that we're
I-
working on
I was gonna
quadrupling
say
the
you're-
housing.
You're preaching to the choir, but I know you're not. preaching
Yeah,
to
no,
the
it's a good statement to make and to remind folks that we have no capacity issues for the actual wastewater. It's the stormwater that comes with it, which will be 10 to 15 times more volume than the actual wastewater.
In short periods of time.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job, Doug. Yes, it's the amount of the rainfall. It has nothing to do with capacity. So thank you, Steve, too. You educated me. There's been a little bit of a swirl and people calling and they know now about the spray paint. The hot pink spray paint belongs to RVSD. So now they're searching the streets. And but actually I like the involvement, they're actually contacting us, they're talking, they're more open. And when would Fairfax be done? Because I know the business thing. Do you have any idea when the project there would be done?
August 2026?
Yeah, so we envision there's probably going to be 2 construction seasons in that project. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but there'll be work in the fall of this year if everything goes to plan and we get the design out and get good bids. We could get some work done before the wet season, but not all of it. And so a lot of this work we do not want to do in the wet season, like the creek crossing work, right, which is half of the project. So really seeing that when the wet season's starting to dissipate in April of the following year, we would kickstart this project into a second phase. But Phil, does that sound about right?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Are we going to, did I read there's going to be new manholes, right, on this?
Yeah, we're always either replacing or rehabilitating the manhole structures.
Will we get the kind that alerts you, the smart ones?
Yeah,
I mean, I think it would be really nice to do a little community drop in at open time about this at one of the council meetings.
Oh, yes.
We need something positive.
I'll be happy to do that. And the smart covers are actually attachments to the manhole cover that measure water level. And so they're transportable. We have certain ones that we have kind of set for long-term data collection, but we have 60 of them total. And so we rotate some around. And for this very purpose, we actually have some dedicated to capital projects so we can document before and after. And it's shown what a huge difference our projects make as far as infiltration and inflow.
Rather than rotate them, I'd rather buy more.
Well, I hear you, but it is a cost, right, Paul? I mean, it's 100,000 a year currently, to keep, and then we got to have staff maintain them. And so we're not saying no, but just a little point of a fun fact is I learned at the CWA conference last April that we have the densest system of smart covers in the United States.
I'm not surprised.
Well, we're all very dense here, so I don't think that's out of line.
Saying, per mile, we have more smart covers than anyone. That may have changed between April and now. I don't know. But at the time, I pressed the vendors and they said, yeah, not just the state, but anywhere we have the.
Exciting.
Steve, didn't you tell me that one of these projects is number 1 on our risk list?
Yes.
The Belina Sherman. You did.
Yeah, it's board packet
Or Bill just said
121.
that.
Yeah, board packet 121. That's the current highest risk sewer in the system.
So really it's a risk avoidance problem too.
That's right.
Um,
And I did want to point out, Phil, because at the finance committee meeting, Tom noticed when in the description on board packet 124 of KJ Woods, it both says that they submitted a complete bid, and then at the final phrase says they submitted and did not submit a complete bid. So just for public record clarification, I presume they did submit a complete bid, but that was a typographical error. Or were they a wobbler?
I think that is a typographical error right there.
Okay, thank you.
They did submit a complete bid?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that was ultimate.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great.
Yes, that's good eye.
It was Tom's notice, but I figured you would be good to notify as well. All right, any other questions or comments by the board? I will, please.
I would I would approve awarding and authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute construction contract for the fiscal year 24-25 Gravity Sewer Improvement Project, which is project number 958 with Glossage Engineering Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $6,137,410.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
All right.
And thank you, Phil.
16A, monthly performance metrics.
Okay, I would like
The
to ask,
highlight.
O&M manager Paul Brummer to give the overview of the monthly metrics.
Good evening. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your time this evening. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through the metrics and look at some of the great work staff are doing. This last month, staff did EAP, Emergency Action Plan training. Had a lot of emergency planning and training this last 3 months. But the Emergency Action Plan training really targets staff responding to emergencies, but not limited to fires, explosions, natural disasters, plane crashes, hazardous material releases, acts of violence. The training also covers shelter in place and evacuation plans. If you recall, the last couple of months, we did the SCRP, which is a spill emergency response plan, and the ERP, which is the emergency response plan for responding to pump station emergencies, which luckily we were briefed on before this last incident we had last week on the, what was it, the 11th? 6th, sorry. So luckily staff were well versed and ready to go to that. So, but this emergency action plan actually includes this building and our evacuation, where to go, active shooter, lockdown, and whatnot. So it's a really good training for staff to have, especially in our new space. The pump crew, amongst other work, worked with PG&E over at Riviera Circle for a planned power outage. We responded, brought our generator, powered the stations. But we also were doing some critical inventory checks and took the time. We have a large 42-inch diameter plug valve over at the landing, which is for large force main breaks or valve issues. So every now and then we'll go by, we grease it, we open it up, we operate it to make sure it's viable in case of an emergency, such as a force main issue we had on the 6th. So it was really good work and everything worked well. It's not a cheap valve, so we want to make sure we maintain it and make sure it works well. Because I believe a valve that size is about $30,000 to $50,000 at least. The line maintenance staff discovered a metal stake driven through a sewer main over on Los Cerros Drive in Greenbrae. They were having a hard time flushing it, couldn't figure it out. So utilizing all the flushing crews have push cameras on them so we can evaluate the pipe after flushing, see what the actual evaluation of the pipe is. Come to find out, this isn't an easement. Somebody had put a small retaining wall and decided to start driving stakes into the side of the hillside without doing USAs. we've contacted the homeowners, we believe it was, and then we're going to pull that stake and refer this to maintenance for emergency repair over there. But luckily, again, eyes on the ground out there, boots on the ground, found another case, which most likely would have caused an overflow at some point, catching debris and whatnot in the system. So another good catch, and staff were really on it. Repair crew did 12 manhole repairs. Wet season is we really work on doing manhole repairs because we can see the I coming in. We have high strength grout we can pump in to seal them up. So we're really focusing on that, working on channel defects with hold back debris. And then along with that, they did 19-point repairs doing grade 4, grade 5, and high frequency cleaning line repairs to help reduce the flushing schedule. And then the condition assessment. We performed 9 dye testing of residents throughout the district, identified 2 laterals in need of repair, and we believe we found 1 cross connection, which we believe is their pool drain, pool deck drain, and some other roof leaders possibly. So we'll be following up with that resident, doing some smoke testing and some more investigation to help keep I and water that we don't need to be treating out of our system. So we'll be working directly with that homeowner to correct these issues and issue a letter cease and desist of discharge from their pool. January was actually a no spill month, thankfully. Unfortunate events this month, but we could say January was a good month.
It was a no rain month.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my brief metrics. If you guys have any questions or concerns or anything I can answer for you.
Board members, anything?
No, I'm just looking at the maintenance performed. There's a lot of maintenance. That was good. 82 mechanical preventions. A lot of work going on.
I see the flow percent at CMSA for 6 months average 42%. Pretty low.
It's all about the I in the winter months, man. We got to get that down, and their bills will go up.
It made
So nice.
huge difference.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Great work.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time,
for always
everybody.
being here to tell us about it too. All right, anything else? If not, we are adjourned until our next regular meeting on March 19th at 5 p.m. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.